In the beginning of the movie we see a group of wealthy and influential individuals traveling to a secluded island known for its exclusive restaurant. They board a ship, and during the journey, they engage in casual conversations with one another. Upon arriving at the island, they are warmly welcomed by the host, who gives them a guided tour of the island and its various facilities. The guests then enter a luxurious restaurant where the kitchen is bustling with chefs meticulously preparing meals. Some customers are already seated, adding to the lively atmosphere. The chefs work with extraordinary precision, creating dishes that look like masterpieces. The host informs the guests that taking pictures of the food is strictly prohibited. Tyler and his girlfriend approach one of the chefs to inquire about a dish. To Tyler's surprise, the chef recognizes him by name, which leaves him feeling slightly uneasy. The chef politely asks them to return to their table. A little later, the head chef Slovik makes his entrance, setting the stage for the evening ahead. Chef Slovik notices Tyler, and there's a sense that something unusual is about to unfold. The chefs diligently serve the first course to the customers, presenting dishes that look artistic and unique. Despite the earlier warning, Tyler secretly takes a picture of his meal, but the host quickly notices him in the act. Meanwhile, the other guests are enjoying their meals, chatting casually. As the first course is about to serve, Slovik tastes the dish and gives a nod of approval, signaling that everything is perfectly prepared. He warmly welcomes the guests and takes a moment to explain the meticulous process behind the next dish. Slovik emphasizes the effort, attention to detail, and precision involved in crafting each plate. He tells the diners that the dishes are not just meant to be eaten but to be experienced. Every bite should evoke a feeling. The chefs bring out the dish with great care, showcasing the level of artistry that has gone into its creation. Chef Slovik introduces the dish, calling it the island, and explains its unique qualities. As he describes the intricacies of the dish, the guests applaud, clearly impressed. Most of the diners seem to enjoy the meal and engage in light, casual conversations with one another. Meanwhile, the host observes everyone closely. However, her demeanor seems to shift. There's a noticeable edge to her behavior. She appears to be observing something specific and comes across as rather stern, almost rude, adding an unsettling undertone to the evening. The second course is introduced by Chef, who announces it as breadless bread plate. Like before, he shares a story behind the dish and highlights its unique concept. The chefs meticulously prepare the plate, which is then served to the guests. To their surprise, the plate contains only a few savory sauces but no bread. The unusual presentation leaves many diners puzzled. Alongside the plate, there's a note explaining that the bread they won't be eating is traditionally made using red fife wheat, a heritage grain that the restaurant seeks to preserve. While some guests appreciate the creativity and the underlying message of the dish, others find it strange. A few guests complain to the host, asking for actual bread to accompany the meal. However, the host firmly declines their request. One man, visibly annoyed, asserts his importance, hinting at his influential status, and demands the bread. The host, unbothered, responds curtly, questioning who he works for and making it clear that he won't be getting any bread. Finally, the host remarks cutting comment, saying you will eat less than your desire and more than you deserve. Her tone and demeanor add to the tension, making the atmosphere increasingly uncomfortable. Tyler accidentally drops his glass of wine on the floor. A staff member promptly cleans up the broken shards with precision. He approaches Margot and questions why she hasn't touched her dish. Margot candidly replies that she's waiting for the next course as she didn't find the current one appealing. He insists that every dish has been meticulously crafted, and it would bring him joy if everyone appreciated them. However, Margot calmly refuses, stating she'll eat only what she truly enjoys. He leaves and quietly converses with his mother seated nearby. The chef then announces the third course, and the chef started preparing the dish. Meanwhile, a couple seated at another table notices Margot. The woman whispers to her husband, saying Margot resembles their daughter, Claire. Her husband dismisses the idea and advises her not to bring it up again. Other guests continue chatting about their everyday lives, seemingly unaware of the brewing tension. Slovik reappears to introduce the third dish, the memory. He shares a deeply personal story from his childhood, recalling how Tuesdays were special for him because of Taco Tuesday. However, one particular night stands out in his memory. His father came home drunk and tried to kill his mother. Young Slovik intervened, using scissors to attack his father and save his mother's life. The revelation shocks the diners, leaving an air of unease among them. Finally, the third dish is served, a beautifully plated chicken breast accompanied by tortillas. Upon closer inspection, the guests notice something startling. The tortillas are engraved with images that seem to depict events from their own pasts of the customers. The realization unsettles the diners, as they begin to question how such personal details could be known. One of the guests confronts the host, pointing at the images on his tortilla, and demands an explanation. The host responds matter-of-factly, explaining that the images represent how his company fabricated fake invoices to deceive people. Enraged, the man threatens, claiming that by tomorrow morning this restaurant could be shut down. However, the host remains calm and dismissively replies that won't be necessary and walked away. Meanwhile, the other guests examine their tortillas, realizing that each one reveals something deeply personal about their past lives. This unsettling discovery leaves many uncomfortable. Margot notices and grows visibly angry. Tyler tries to calm her down, warning her not to do anything that could damage her reputation. This leads to a brief argument between the two, but Tyler remains more focused on enjoying the meal. Margot decides to step away and heads to the restroom. The host notices and guides her to the right direction. As Margot passes a mysterious silver door, she curiously asks the host what's behind it. The host replies it's something very special. In the restroom, Margot lights a cigarette. Suddenly, Chef Slovik enters and questions why she didn't eat the second dish, asking what she didn't like about it. Margot calmly responds that she simply wasn't hungry. Slovik, visibly displeased, explains how deeply it affects him when someone doesn't appreciate his creations. He then shifts the conversation and asks who she is. Margot replies, introducing herself as Margot Mills, but Slovik immediately senses she's lying. He hints at knowing her true identity, stating that she doesn't belong here. The exchange becomes increasingly tense, suggesting that Slovik knows far more about Margot than he's letting on, leaving her both unnerved and defensive. Some workers spread a pristine white cloth on the floor and carefully decorate it, creating an eerie yet elegant setup. Chef Slovik steps forward to announce the fourth course. Before revealing the dish, he invites one of his sous chefs, Jeremy, to the center of attention. Slovik introduces Jeremy, explaining how he studied at culinary school and always aspired to work under him. He praises Jeremy's dedication and skills but then remarks despite his talent, he can never truly become like him. Slovik's tone shifts as he questions Jeremy, asking if he's happy with his life and if he still dreams of being like him. Jeremy, visibly conflicted, admits that he's not happy and agrees he can never match Slovik's stature. Without warning, the tension culminates as Jeremy pulls out a gun and shoots himself in front of everyone. The diners are left in shock and horror, frozen by what they've just witnessed. The once controlled atmosphere of the restaurant begins to unravel, leaving the guests increasingly unnerved by the dark and unpredictable nature of the evening. The dish named the mess is served, leaving the guests deeply unsettled after witnessing Jeremy's shocking death. While the diners are visibly panicked, they are ushered back to their tables, and Slovik calmly explains that this horrifying act is part of the experience. Some guests convince themselves it's an elaborate theatrical performance, but the grim reality is that Jeremy is truly dead. Fearful of defying Slovik, the guests hesitantly begin eating the dish. Meanwhile, an elderly couple attempts to leave, but the host intercepts them, coldly stating that no one is allowed to leave. As they resist, a guard steps in and cuts off one of his fingers, leaving him crying in pain. The rest of the guests spiral into panic, but Tyler, strangely unfazed, continues to act as though everything is normal. He seems captivated by the meal and Slovik's vision, ignoring the chaos around him. The host restores order, urging everyone to remain seated. The room is filled with tension and confusion as no one can make sense of what is happening. The host then approaches Margot and informs her that Chef wants to speak with her. Margot reluctantly goes to meet him. Slovik confronts her again, pressing her to reveal her true identity. Margot insists that she's Margot, but Slovik isn't convinced. He accuses her of not belonging here and disrupting his meticulously planned evening. Margot asks whether he'll let her go if she wasn't meant to be on the guest list. Slovik grimly responds, revealing that everyone will going to die tonight, including the staff and himself. He dismisses Margot, saying that the next course will soon be served and instructing her to return to her seat. One of the guests, desperate to escape, tries to shatter the glass panel with his chair, but it doesn't break. The guests remain trapped. Chef returns to present the next course, palate cleanser, a simple tea designed to reset the palate. While explaining the dish, the tension among the guests escalates as they demand answers about how they can leave. Slovik coldly responds that no one is allowed to leave. Slovik then turns his attention to one guest, exposing his past mistakes. He reveals how she deceived people for his own gain in her profession, causing harm to many. The uncomfortable revelations continue as another woman pleads with him, insisting that her husband needs medical attention or his condition will worsen. Slovik ignores her plea and instead asks him a simple question: "You've dined here many times before, can you name even one dish you've eaten here?" The man fails to answer, which infuriates Slovik. He berates the guests for their lack of appreciation for the staff who have dedicated their lives to creating these meals. The atmosphere grows darker as the diners witness another horrifying event. Outside the restaurant, a man is tied up and adorned with angel wings before being hoisted into the air. The guests are horrified as they realize this is no act. Desperate, they plead with Slovik, offering money to spare their lives. Slovik dismisses their offers, making it clear that wealth holds no value in the night he has orchestrated. The man with the wings is then lowered into ocean and drowned in front of everyone, leaving the guests utterly terrified and helpless. Margot is summoned to Chef Slovik's office, where the tension between them escalates. She finally admits to hiding her true identity and confesses that she doesn't belong here. Slovik probes further into her life, trying to uncover her secrets. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, the other guests are escorted outside for the next part of the unsettling evening. Outside, Slovik calls forward one of his sous chefs, a young woman. She recounts a disturbing incident, revealing that Slovik had sexually harassed her when she first started working under him. After the incident, he ignored her for 8 months, leaving her feeling betrayed and humiliated. She stabs Slovik in the leg with a scissor. Slovik doesn't retaliate. Instead, he acknowledges his wrongdoing and apologizes to her in front of everyone, accepting the punishment without resistance. Slovik then announces a grim game for the male guests. They will be given a chance to escape. He grants them 45 seconds to run into the surrounding forest before his guards will begin hunting them down. As soon as the timer starts, the men frantically scatter, running for their lives. While the men are being chased through the forest, Slovik introduces the next course for the female guests, a dish called Man's Folly. The dish is served with an air of irony, and the women tentatively taste it. To their surprise, the dish is exquisite, and they reluctantly compliment it. Hearing their praise, the sous chef who prepared the dish begins to cry, overwhelmed by the rare recognition of her work. They start sharing their life with each other despite know that everyone going to die. Margot revealed that her name is Erin, not Margot. Meanwhile, the male guests' desperate attempts to evade capture unfold in the background. Despite their efforts, the guards systematically track them down one by one. Eventually, all the men are brought back to the restaurant, humiliated and exhausted, forced to rejoin the group as the twisted evening continues. Chef confronts Tyler and demands to know why he came to the restaurant. It's revealed that Tyler knew everyone would die that night, but he still came, bringing Erin along as a fake girlfriend after his real girlfriend declined. Enraged and betrayed, Margot punches Tyler for knowingly dragging her into this deadly situation. Chef, aware of Tyler's ambitions to become a chef, mockingly gives him a chef's uniform. He orders Tyler to prepare a dish. Nervous and visibly sweating, Tyler attempts to cook a lamb dish, but the result is terrible. He humiliates him in front of everyone, calling out his lack of skill. Devastated, Tyler removes his chef's coat and retreats to the back kitchen. Chef then calls Margot into the kitchen and informs her that she's now part of his team. He explains that the evening's final course will be a dessert, but they need a barrel from the smokehouse to complete it. He hands her the key and instructs her to retrieve it. Later Margot discovers that Tyler has hanged himself, unable to cope with the humiliation. Heading to the smokehouse, Margot finds a knife. She takes it with her and ventures into Slovik's private room. Inside, she discovers photographs from his youth and framed newspaper articles about his culinary journey. Among the items, she finds a radio and uses it to call for help. Margot eventually returns with the barrel, and shortly after, a police boat arrives at the island. The guards immediately adjust their behavior, trying to appear calm and professional. A lone officer comes ashore, claiming to have received a distress call. He tries to downplay the situation, assuring the officer that everything is fine and that the guests are enjoying themselves. The officer begins to inspect the scene. One of the guests, recognizing the opportunity, discreetly hands him a note that says "Help us." Realizing the gravity of the situation, the officer draws his gun and orders him to kneel. The guests are momentarily filled with hope, believing they will finally be rescued. However, the officer reveals himself to be part of his elaborate plan. Enraged by Margot's interference and failed attempt to seek help, he orders his team of chefs to begin preparing the final course of the evening. Margot begins to understand the situation and voices her dissatisfaction with the meal. She tells Chef Slovik that she didn't enjoy the food and wants to leave. She points out that all the dishes lacked one key element, love. She says she doesn't want any fancy meals anymore and is still hungry. Hearing this, Chef Slovik asks her what she would like to eat. Margot demands a simple cheeseburger, without any elaborate decorations, just a classic cheeseburger. Chef Slovik, humbled by her request, agrees and says they can make it exactly as she wants. For the first time that night, Chef Slovik himself prepares the cheeseburger in a classic style. He serves it to Margot, who takes a bite and expresses her satisfaction. Chef Slovik is genuinely pleased to see her enjoy it, a small victory in an otherwise grim evening. Margot asks for the leftover cheeseburger to be packed for later. The staff wraps up the remaining food, and she pays for her meal. Afterward, Margot leaves the restaurant, and this time, no one tries to stop her. Chef expresses his gratitude to everyone for being there that night. The guests begin to pay their bills, and Chef introduces the final dessert, named s'mores. The chefs start decorating the floor and preparing the final touches for the guests. Margot manages to find a boat and tries to start it in an attempt to escape. Meanwhile, Chef Slovik steps forward, holding a burning coal in his hand. He speaks words that cause the guests to reflect on the mistakes they've made in their lives. Margot escapes the chaos. Chef drops the burning coal onto the floor, and the fire begins to spread. The guests are consumed by the flames, unable to escape. Margot watches from a distance as the restaurant is engulfed in flames. She feels fortunate to have made it out and, finding solace in her survival, begins eating the remaining cheeseburger. The movie ends not with grand revelations but with a poignant reminder: in a world fixated on artifice, the simple pleasures of life, honest food, freedom, and self-determination, are what truly matter. If you like our work, please share with your friend and subscribe our channel.